Did Disney really look at zombies, werewolves, aliens, vampires, daywalkers, and then go, you know what's missing? Mermaids. Apparently, yes, and honestly, I kind of love the chaos. Because if you thought this franchise had already invited every possible supernatural neighbor to the party, well, the ocean has officially RSVP'd. Zombies 5 is happening, and just the idea of mysterious mermaids showing up after everything that happened in the last movie already sounds like the beginning of another very, very messy family reunion. Except this time, the family lives under the sea. Now here's the interesting part. Disney has officially greenlit Zombies 5 for Disney Plus and Disney Channel, which says a lot considering how successful this franchise has become. 4 movies, an animated series, charting soundtracks, and more than 250 million streaming hours later, they're clearly not ready to leave this universe behind. Ever since the first movie arrived in 2018, these films have continued finding huge audiences, so another sequel really isn't that surprising. But what makes this one feel different is the direction it's taking. We're not simply continuing the same story, it feels like the world itself is getting bigger. See, the story picks up after the events of Zombies 4: Dawn of the Vampires. And if you watch that ending, you already know the characters fought incredibly hard just to create peace between the Daywalkers and the vampires. It wasn't exactly easy either. They had distrust, old rivalries, limited resources, and leaders who were ready to push everything into an all-out conflict. Throughout Zombies 4, Zed and Addison once again found themselves helping another generation solve problems that had existed long before they arrived. Nova and Victor slowly discovered that the two groups were never supposed to be enemies forever. The Moonstones, which turned out to be two halves of one whole, helped restore the orchard and reminded everyone that cooperation had always been stronger than division. By the end, peace had finally been achieved. And naturally, that's exactly when Disney decides to throw another supernatural problem into the mix, because peace apparently has the lifespan of ice cream on a summer afternoon. According to the official description, the fragile harmony is suddenly tested when a band of fierce mermaids arrives in Rayburn. They're not simply visiting, they're making waves, literally and figuratively, while using a persuasive siren song to lure new allies toward their side. Now that's where things immediately become interesting. Disney isn't saying these mermaids are outright villains. They're described as mysterious. They're persuasive, they're gathering allies, and the biggest question becomes why? That's the mystery driving the movie. Nova and Victor once again have to bring their groups together to figure out what these mermaids are really after before everything they worked so hard to build falls apart. And honestly, that setup alone creates plenty of room for speculation. Because if someone arrives singing magical songs that convince people to join them, are they trying to help? Are they trying to recruit? Are they trying to protect something? Or is there another reason entirely that hasn't been revealed yet? Right now, nobody outside Disney knows. The fun part is simply wondering where this could go. One thing that doesn't feel surprising anymore is that Nova and Victor seem ready to step even further into the spotlight. Zombies 4 already spent a lot of time building them as the next generation of central characters. Think back to everything that happened. Nova and Victor came from opposite sides of a conflict that had existed for years. Both were encouraged by their own leaders to betray the other side once the gate opened. Instead, they questioned those beliefs, worked together, reunited the Moonstones, restored the orchard, and ultimately helped everyone understand that cooperation was always the answer. That entire story almost felt like a passing of the torch moment. Even the ending pointed toward their future together. So seeing them return as the leaders trying to protect peace in Zombies 5 makes perfect sense based on everything we've already seen. Of course, fans of the original leads don't have to panic either. Milo Manheim and Meg Donnelly are returning as executive producers. Trevor Torchman is also coming back as Bucky, Addison's cousin, and everyone's favorite cheer captain from the original trilogy. Production is set to begin this spring in New Zealand, although Disney says the official title will be announced later. Then there's the returning cast from Zombies 4. Malachi Barton comes back as Victor, Freya Skye returns as Nova, Swayam Bhatia returns as Vera, Julian Lerner returns as Ray, Mekanan Knife returns as Vargas, so the core group introduced in the previous movie isn't going anywhere. But of course, you can't introduce mermaids without actually introducing mermaids. Disney has already revealed 3 of them. Diana Babnikova plays Pearl, who's described as the cool girl. Taylor Oliver plays Finn, described as the bad boy. And Olive Mortimer plays Sandy, the tech whiz. Now I have to admit, tech whiz mermaid is probably not a combination I would have predicted. When somebody says mermaid, my brain immediately imagines seashells, coral reefs, and dramatic slow-motion swimming. Apparently, Disney's brain went, what if she also happens to be really good with technology? Fair enough. I'm curious how that works. And again, we don't actually know yet. But it's definitely one of those descriptions that immediately makes you wonder what role Sandy could play compared to Pearl and Finn. Another new addition is Emily Costrici as Izzy, who's introduced as Zed's zombie cousin and also a new transfer student. That immediately connects the older generation back into the newer storyline in an interesting way. Even though the franchise appears to be spending more time with Nova and Victor's generation, bringing in a member of Zed's family keeps those original connections alive. Then there's someone who's been there almost since the beginning behind the camera. Paul Hoen returns to direct this 5th installment, continuing his streak of directing every movie in the Zombies franchise. That consistency probably matters more than people realize. When one director guides an entire series, the tone usually stays familiar even as the world expands with new monsters and new characters. Speaking of expanding the world, let's go back to the ending of Zombies 4 for a moment. Because looking back now, it almost feels like Disney was quietly leaving breadcrumbs. After Nova and Victor embrace, an enormous water funnel rises from the ocean beside them. At the same time, it simply looked mysterious. Now, after Disney officially confirmed that mermaids are arriving, that ending suddenly makes a whole lot more sense. It wasn't just a random visual, it was quietly hinting that something from the ocean was already on its way. And that's actually pretty satisfying because it means this wasn't completely out of nowhere. Even earlier than that, mermaids had already appeared as part of the franchise's universe in the animated epilogue connected to Zombies 3. So while they may be brand new to the live-action movies, they weren't exactly invented yesterday. They've been floating around the universe for a while. No pun intended. Okay, maybe a little intended. The bigger question is, what role they'll ultimately play? The official description only tells us they're making waves and using persuasive siren songs to gather allies. Everything beyond that remains a mystery. Maybe they believe they're right. Maybe there's an even bigger misunderstanding waiting to unfold. Right now, every possibility stays on the table because Disney simply hasn't revealed enough information yet. And honestly, that's probably the smartest approach. If they explained every motivation before the movie even started filming, there wouldn't be much left to discover. Another interesting thing is how this continues the franchise's overall pattern. Each movie introduces another community into this growing supernatural world. Instead of shrinking the universe, every installment seems determined to expand it further. Now the ocean itself is entering the picture. That opens up entirely new possibilities for locations, conflicts, friendships, and probably a whole lot of songs. Because let's be honest, this is Zombies. Nobody stays quiet for long. Someone is absolutely going to burst into music eventually. The only question is whether the mermaids sing first or everybody else starts singing because of the siren song. Either way, I wouldn't complain. So what do you think? Will the mermaids end up being the villains, future allies, or is Disney hiding an even bigger twist? Let me know your theories in the comments. I'd love to read them. If you enjoyed this first look, be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more Disney and Zombies updates, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the latest news. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one!